Good evening, friends. Am I coming through okay? We seem to be having some adverse weather tonight. Pumpkin doesn't seem to mind. He's sleeping right through it. This week's story is a trip. Get comfy and let's get started. This story was told to me by a man named Thomas. Given his history, he seems to be a less than reliable storyteller, but on the other hand, I don't see how anyone could make this up. I'll let you be the judge. This is The Parade. Thomas had been a drunk most of his adult life. He had been homeless for perhaps the last decade, maybe more. He had drank so much he couldn't even remember how he got to be homeless exactly. But he was pretty sure it had something to do with an ex-wife, though he couldn't rightly recall being married. He panhandled mostly. Liquor was more important than food, and he had a cozy little corner staked out just for himself, down an alley next to an abandoned grocery store. He could see the street from here, which was usually devoid of all life this time of night. He settled down in the cold, threadbare shirt stuffed with newspaper, covered up with an unfolded electronics box, and proceeded to nurse his bottle until he passed out. About 3 nips in, best he could figure, he heard something that sounded like otherworldly calliope music. Dark yet dulcet tones seemed to drift from far away in the chill night air. Forgetting his bottle, he strained to listen, and they seemed to grow closer. The minor key was grim but enticing. The streetlight at the end of the alley flickered. The sound grew louder and more chaotic, amidst a thrumming and vibrating undertone. Lights flashed up and down the block. Could this be a parade? It had to be past midnight now. And in this, the worst part of town? He sat up on one elbow and peered towards the road, squinting. A brightly lit object passed the corner, blaring the strange notes, now deafening. And it seemed to be hovering as it cast a shadow directly underneath it. And he could see no wheels, legs, or anything else holding it up. Small, bipedal creatures dashed nervously behind it. One ran halfway down the alley towards him, then stopped and turned back. That vibration got louder and took on an insectile, high keening tone, and no wonder, for behind the impish figures were large mantis-looking creatures, dark brown and spotty as they passed under the flickering streetlight. And if that wasn't strange enough, they were riding, crouched on the backs of giant rat-like animals. In horror, Thomas realized that the mantis men seemed to be controlling their rat mounts through a forelimb thrust into the back of those vaguely mammalian heads, indicated by an abruptly ending appendage and a glistening patch of ivory fur. They vibrated their long, stiff, membranous wings in an offbeat oscillation that made his head feel full and painful. He was then struck by a curious smell. It was sweet and fetid at the same time. He could hear a scraping sound as the mantids made their way up the street, following in the path of the calliope thing, hanging a right at the next block and disappearing from view. Passing by the mouth of the alley, with a stench that even made an old drunkard gag, was a decaying colossus dragging a heavy sledge. If Thomas had been more educated, he would have recognized the dark and rotting thing as a mastodon. It lumbered heavily and unsteadily as that eons-old dead smell wafted down the alleyway. As it moved, Large chunks of flesh and long, coarse fur fell into the street, with grotesque, wet smacking sounds. A large portion of its shoulder bone was visible where the harness used to drag the sledge had rubbed the rotting meat away. The sledge was full of luminescent things that moved in shifty and alien ways. The street light flickered and went out, and all Thomas could see were dark, worming and undulating forms punctuated with a strange polka dotting of glowing lights, some yellow, some bluish, some defying a description of color. He rubbed his bloodshot eyes with icy fingers, but couldn't bear to look away. A few of the things looked like they might have dropped out of the sledge and scurried into the sewer grates. Then came the stilt-walkers, obscenely tall beings that walked on all fours with delicate, elongated limbs, camel-like necks, and all too human heads. The streetlight flickered back on as the last two of these dozen creatures ambled rhythmically down the street, stopping only to utter guttural messages to the others and occasionally snap at an ally for reasons unclear. They had sharp, all too white teeth with a constantly sneering upper lip, taut, rubbery appearing yet smooth skin, and infinitely dark sideways oval-shaped eyes. One glanced in Thomas's direction, and at once he seemed to be yanked into a vortex of infinite knowledge, infinite space, and infinite lifetimes for just a second, and then its gaze broke and it sauntered on, and he felt almost like he had been physically dropped on the ground. Lastly came the clowns, humanoid things with faces twisted into grisly and sinister expressions, over-large eyes, hands, and feet. They jostled, pushed, and shoved one another, but there were no magic tricks, colorful parasols, or fuzzy little mutt dogs. They congregated at the mouth of the alley and leered, almost as if they were sure they saw something but didn't quite know what. Their eyes glowed red in the shadow of their brows, even under the street light. They hissed and swayed back and forth as a group, hypnotically moving, endlessly terrifying. Their coarse and sparse hair stood out at weird angles. They were hideous enough without grease paint. As they started to stalk forward down the alley, a terrifying blat from the calliope caught their attention, and they fumbled and shoved over one another and hurried irrhythmically up the street until they were out of sight. Thomas listened for a long time, long after the dismal calliope stopped playing, long after the droning, whining mantids had ceased to beat their wings, long after he forgot the limitless multiverses that the stilt-walker had shown him, long after his heart had stopped pounding, long after his brain had cut off his ability to care. That was a fever dream for sure. What do you think, friends? Was he lying, hallucinating, or something else? Speaking of hallucinating, those weird shadows at the corners of the room are back, so I better cut the signal before they decide I'm expendable. This is your late night void DJ signing off until the static fades again.